Hey there guys, it's John here with the TheFLICKpick channel, and it's time for my ultimate top 20 list of all time. These are movies that mean something to me, and if I wanted to give that generic version of what a top 20 list is, I could do it. But these are movies that matter to me, they influenced my life over the years, and each and every single one of these has a story behind why I like it. So let's just get started. To play, yay! Warriors, come out to play, yay! I'm sorry, that was slightly annoying, but if you guys don't know what I'm talking about, it's one of my favorite movies of all time, and it starts off the top 20 list. At number 20, it's The Warriors. And I know I look like a tool bag with this bandana on, but that's okay, because I'm going to wear it until we're done with the Warriors segment here. Okay, I'll take it off, I'm sorry. Ugh. I felt like a badass for about 5 minutes there. I mean, if there's 4 words that sum up the Warriors, it's "Can you dig it?" And that was my impression of Cyrus, the leader of all the gangs who was actually shot, and the blame went on one of the Warriors. I mean, the thing I love most about the Warriors, it's such a late 70s, gritty, weird, odd movie. And I remember the first time I ever seen the Warriors, it was back in the early 90s, and it was on my our Betamax that we had. You guys know what I'm talking about? Probably not the youngsters out there, but yeah, it was a shittier thing than the VHS. Imagine that, right? And you know, if at the age of 9, a movie makes you want to join a gang, it's doing something right, because the Baseball Furies, my god, they were badass. They got to wear baseball uniforms, and they had face paint. And you know, when a movie achieves that, there's something golden there. At number 19, father to a dead son, husband to a dead wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life and the next. That's right, Gladiator. Maximus Mauritius Decimus at his best. I'm going to be honest with you, I think this is Ridley Scott's best film. I mean, there wasn't really a negative about this. I mean, it had Russell Crowe being a badass. He, goes up through the ranks of Gladiator. He almost gets his freedom. I mean, it's just such a climactic ending. I mean, this movie had everything. It had incest. It had betrayal. I mean, what more did you want? And the thing about it is, did anyone else notice that Maximus Mauritius Decimus... Okay, yeah, I said it right. His hair always looked like it had a little bit of gel in it. He was definitely not a Duper Dan man, damn it. Gosh, I'm kind of jealous of people back then, because I feel like I'm in the wrong century. People back then, to be entertained, would buy tickets, they go to the Roman Colosseum to see Christians fed to lions, people mutilated, desecrated, and just, stabbed to death. Nowadays, what do we have to do? We go buy tickets to the latest Lindsay Lohan movie just to count our freckles. But yeah, if you had to pick one epic movie dealing with Rome, Gladiator is the only movie for me. And at number 18, one of my favorite comedies of all time, it's Superbad. If you had to take my whole high school career and make it into a 2-hour movie, it would be Superbad. I was a pervert. I mean, all I did is talk about porn. I drank down in my parents' basement. I still do. When Jonah Hill said he got 3/4 of a hand job, that really struck home with me. That's sad, I know, but it's true. I mean, the movie was grotesque, it was crude, it was rude, and it was everything I liked. I mean, what other movie is going to give you 20 different images of cock drawings? Some of you might be thinking that's a bad thing, but there's never enough cock drawings in a movie for me. Next up at number 17, this movie would be me back in the 80s if I was a stock trader on Wall Street and I had a lot of money to blow. Because yes, I am self-obsessed. I would be willing to pay for sex if I had enough money. And it's American Psycho. Patrick Bateman, Christian Bale. I mean, just what a perfect combination. This guy was a self-obsessed asshole maniac who chopped people up and had no remorse. With scenes like this, how can you go wrong? There was a line in this movie that literally changed my life, and I'm going to tell you what it is. Don't just look at it, eat it! Everything about this was awesome. It was a dark comedy, it kind of had a horror aspect to it. But anyway, guys, I have to go return some videotapes. I'll see you later. Remember, the 5th of November. At number 16, one of the kind of underrated comic book films of all time, it's V for Vendetta. I mean, I wasn't expecting much when I first seen V for Vendetta, but that was like the first time I was ever really introduced to Natalie Portman, and then she shaved her head bald, and just something about that blew me away. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was her and her little orange apron she had to wear when she was put in the cell for several days. But V for Vendetta, I mean, it gave me goosebumps, that movie. I mean, it was one man who stood as a symbol for justice against the corrupt city, and he made a change. It almost sounds like Batman. The guys who did this movie, the Wachowski brothers, I mean, yeah, they did The Matrix. The first one was good. But V for Vendetta was such a high point in these guys' career. I mean, they had no room to go but down, and then they did Speed Racer, so I guess I rest my case. But V for Vendetta, one of the coolest comic book movies ever made. I hate Peter Panning. You rude, crude bag of pre-food chew, dude? Rufio! That's right, it's Hook, guys. One of my favorite childhood movies of all time, and one of the Steven Spielberg movies that kind of get pooped on, in my opinion. I mean, Hook, what more did you want? It gave you adventure, it gave you action, it gave you kind of a fresh take on the story of Peter Pan. I mean, it had a guy named Rufio in it. Shit! Gotta save Maggie, gotta save Jack, Hook is back. You know, and Robin Williams, I mean, he really is a big kid at heart, and he was a perfect casting for that movie, Peter Pan. And Julia Roberts I could have done without in the movie, but I mean, everything about that movie was awesome. And Jack, didn't he seem like a little asshole? Whatever happened to that guy? I don't know, but that movie made me want to go outside, build a treehouse in the backyard, and become one of the Lost Boys. What a great movie with a great theme. Never wanting to grow up. What's wrong with that? Alright, next up at number 14... one of the coolest, smartest movies I've ever seen about a con man, and it's Catch Me If You Can. I mean, the movie starred Leonardo DiCaprio as a young con man who was forging checks, making checks, pretending to be an airline pilot, a doctor, a lawyer, and it was all based on a true story. And then you had Tom Hanks as the FBI agent after him, but in the end, they actually become friends. I'm one of those guys who kind of supports the underdog, and if he's a criminal, I support him a little bit more, if he's a smart criminal. The life this kid lived, with cashing all these checks and getting all this money, I mean, I was jealous. I feel like if I was alive in the 60s and I was his age, I would have been capable of doing things like this. But I most likely would have joined Vietnam and died 3 weeks later. I'm a little wired. I could eat a peach for hours. That was a bad impression, I know, but it kind of went with the next movie, and that's Lord of War, starring Nicolas Cage as a arms dealer. You know, and another movie where you can root for the criminal, once again. Something about him. I mean, he was always 2 steps ahead. He was always ahead of the game. He covered every detail, and he sold a lot of guns. And just, I love the movie's narration with Nicolas Cage talking. There's a man out there with a bomb! And Lord of War, there's something about this guy's cockiness, his attitude, and always being 2 steps ahead of the game, and he always knew he was going to get out of every situation he was in, and that's what I respected about the movie. The guy was confident. And speaking of Nicolas Cage, my number 12 movie on the list is going to be The Rock. Now, some would say this is Michael Bay's only good movie, and most would say he's never made a good movie, but, you know, I think The Rock is his best movie, and it's a damn good action movie. It stars Nicolas Cage, Sean Connery. Yeah, best. Losers say they're gonna try their best. Winners go home and fuck the prom queen. It had explosions. It had guys with needles sticking them in their heart. I mean, it had Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery. What more do you want me to say? Just a great action movie, well shot, well done, and this was a man's movie. This was full of testosterone and adrenaline. Next up at number 11, let's lighten the load here, guys. It's Dazed and Confused. What a great stoner movie. It was made in the early 90s. It takes place in the 70s. And, you know, it makes you wish you were in high school back in the 70s. I mean, it just seemed like everything was so fun and cool then. Everyone had fast cars. No one gave a shit about anything, and they just wanted to party at the Moon Tower. But Dazed and Confused, I've watched that over and over. I can watch it maybe at least 3 or 4 times a year. The greatest thing about that movie is they went around paddling kids who were becoming freshmen. And, you know, I'm an egotistical asshole, and I get off on hurting people smaller than me, so that would have really been awesome to do. I mean, I kind of would have been like Ben Affleck back then. I would have been the douchebag asshole who fails senior year just to stay another year and paddle kids. And that might be odd, but that would have been my life. I'm not proud to admit that, but yeah, it's true. If you guys want to go take a pee break, now's the time. .21 gigawatts! Hey Doc, what are you doing? That was my impression of Marty McFly from Back to the Future. This is fucking stupid. Real quick, look at the skateboard I found in our garage. Look at this damn thing. It's made out of plastic. It's Back to the Future, the first one. I like the other 2, but The only one's going to be on the list is number 1. And that movie, I mean, what a fun movie. This is what movies should be. I mean, it's a little over the top, it's corny at times, but it's so fun. I mean, you had Doc Brown, you had Crispin Glover, I mean, you had Michael J. Fox, and I'm sorry, that was wrong. There were so many memorable scenes in Back to the Future. I mean, when he plays Johnny B. Good, or is it Johnny B. Bad? Either one. He plays it on the guitar, then he goes a little crazy and everyone looks at him. I mean, the manure scene. I mean, it had Biff. What an asshole. But I feel like I would have been best friends with him back then. I want to make like a tree and get out of here. Number 9. I kind of bend the rules on this top 20 list, and I actually have 2 movies in the place of number 9, because I consider this one big movie, and you might disagree with that, and that's okay, because I almost do too, but it's Batman Begins and The Dark Knight, and I'm putting them both at the number 9 spot, because Batman is my favorite character of all time. He's some rich guy who wants to fight justice. He has a lot of money, he has a little muscle, and he takes matters into his own hands, and I respect that. And I love a vigilante. I remember seeing the trailer for Batman Begins and thinking, what the fuck is this? What is happening? I see, okay, is this a Bruce Wayne movie or something? What's happening? And then he has the mask. Oh my god, it sent chills on my body. I was like, someone's doing Batman again, and they're doing it right. Thank God. Batman Begins was just a great film. I mean, it had grittiness, it had realisticness, it had Morgan Freeman, and then it had the Tumbler. What a wet dream for a man like me with a small man complex. Like a Ferrari meets a Panzer tank, and it was just amazing. A few years later, we got The Dark Knight. It topped itself. I mean, this movie was like a crime drama thriller, and then you throw Batman into it, and it just became fucking epic. Where is he? Justice. And then you have performances in the movie like Heath Ledger's. And I'm not just saying that because the guy passed away. I'm saying it because the guy fucking did a phenomenal job as the Joker. And personally, I think he kicked Jack Nicholson's Joker in the ass. He can go listen to Prince music or something. Just 2 great comic book action films, and great films in general. Everything right. I mean, there was a few flaws here and there in The Dark Knight, but I mean, just so much of the grand epicness and the realism in it. I mean, it just, you forget about the ferry boat scene. I have emphysema. Next up at number 8, another classic early 80s movie starring Sean Penn. The movie's Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And this is just one of the greatest high school comedies ever made. I mean, it covers so many different lifestyles and aspects. I mean, you had the douchebag guy, you had the geeky guy, you had the hot slut, the young slut, the older slut, and who was the older slut? I mean, there was something for everybody in this movie. And this movie, I mean, it had levels where it was light and funny, and it had other ones where it kind of got dark and serious and gritty. I mean, it went from, you know, jerking off in the bathroom, looking at some hot chick out at the pool, and, hi, Brad, did you want me? What was that chick's name who Brad imagined naked? Phoebe Gates? Phoebe? Phoebe Cates? Something like that. She was in Drop Dead Fred and she made mud pies. And it's those serious issues blended with those lighthearted ones that just make it a fun and enjoyable movie, but at the same time, it actually hits an emotion or two in you. But Fast Times at Ridgemont High, what a classic 80s movie. You working hard or hardly working? I still use that line. And, it doesn't work. Hello, Clarice. How are you today? Next up at number 7, it's dark, it's gritty, it's evil, and it's Silence of the Lambs. So well will it tickle you when your daughter's laying on the slab. There's something about a transgender homosexual who cuts the skin off of large ladies and puts them in a well that just... What a great character. It puts lotion in the basket. It puts the lotion in the basket. It puts the fucking lotion in the basket! Silence of the Lambs. It had Jodie Foster as a young Agent Starling. It had Anthony Hopkins as the most iconic character, in my opinion, Hannibal Lecter. And then it had Buffalo Bill. What size are you? Oh, she was a big old fat lady, wasn't she? And the thing about Silence of the Lambs that can scare the shit out of you is all this kind of shit really happens. I mean, at one point or another, shit like this has happened in society. I mean, there's guys out there who want to cut your nipples off and make a lampshade out of them. But did anyone else out there root for Hannibal Lecter? I mean, something about the guy is I knew he was bad, but there's something about him I always wanted him to win in every situation because he was just so damn smart and witty and he had so much etiquette. 5'9", blonde hair, blue eyes. Last time I talked to him, he was living in the Philadelphia area. He could have been lying, though. I wouldn't let you in my room if you were growing on my ass. Next up at number 6, we just talked about Silence of the Lambs and cannibalism and killing people in wells. But we're going to talk about Home Alone now. And just what a great, fun childhood memory film. I can't tell you guys how many times I hid up in our basement waiting for my parents to forget about me so I could come back downstairs, make a little booby traps, and help some guys broke into my house. But with my luck, they probably would have killed, raped me, and left my body on the kitchen floor for my parents to come home and find my dead corpse. And just what a great film. Macaulay Culkin at his best. Damn, who can forget about John Candy's cameos as a polka player? Polka polka! But Home Alone, it's one of those movies, I don't care who you are. As a kid, how did you not like that? You know, and Home Alone's just one of those movies that you like it as a kid, but then you grow up and you really like it. Or at least that's how I feel my situation. Because I look back on it, and it just reminds me of so many things as being a kid. I think I'm gonna cry. Promise me you're not gonna kill anybody! I'm a Terminator, it's what I do. Next up at the number 5 spot, it's Terminator 2 Judgment Day, directed by James Cameron, and without a doubt, his best movie he's ever made in my opinion. I mean, it had Arnold Schwarzenegger, it had Edward Furlong, I mean, the cinematography, the action, and talk about a sequel that topped itself 10 times over. I mean, the bad guy in this movie was a fucking assassin who could turn into liquid metal and stab people. Every scene was groundbreaking, it was just action, but it was well done, well filmed, and well acted. But there was always something about that young John Connor where I feel like if I was his age, I would have been friends with him because he was cool and he had a dirt bike, plus he knew how to hack into ATMs and take money and shit, and he liked arcade games. Anyway, Sarah Connor, I don't know what it was, but Linda Hamilton kind of turns me on. I know that's weird, but let's just keep going. At number 4, another action movie, and this movie, when I think about this, I think about sitting down eating popcorn with my dad at a young age, because it was one of his favorite action movies. It starred Keanu Reeves and Patrick Swayze, and if that's not something that sells the movie, I don't know what else is. That was kind of a joke, but I like Patrick Swayze. It's Point Break. I mean, a cop who becomes a surfer to stop a group of bank robbers. I mean, what a badass plot. Hey, Boatman! I mean, the movie had so many great, epic lines. There's cliffs on both sides of us. What am I going to do? Paddle to New Zealand? I mean, shit. And then the guy dies in a wave. That's the way I want to go, but I can't surf. The part where Johnny Utah jumps out of the plane after Bodie and has a gun, but he doesn't even have a fucking parachute on. It was so badass, and so many quippy, cool, badass, you know, testosterone-driven one-liners. I mean, it had Gary Busey in it. Do I need to say more how crazy this movie was? But number 3, I'm going to tone down the action, and it's a coming-of-age film. It's based on one of Stephen King's novels, The Body. It's Stand By Me. And what a great coming-to-age film. I mean, it's a group of 4 friends. You had the kind of badass kid from the wrong side of the tracks. You had the crazy kid, Corey Feldman. You had the chubby kid who's kind of a nerd, and then you had the normal kid. And just there was always something about that bonding and that friendship of these 4 best friends walking down the train tracks to find that dead body. There was just something about that camaraderie, them sitting out around a bonfire, you know, smoking cigarettes and telling stories about lard ass that really always captured my heart. I mean, and the movie, I mean, it sends tears on your eyes because you think about your friends as you get older, and this movie, with the narration at the end, you know, he's talking about how his best friend died and how he went on to do this, and Teddy went on to do odd jobs because he couldn't join the army. Suck my fat one, you dime store hood. And speaking of Stephen King novels adapted into movies, another one is The Shawshank Redemption. So at number 2, The Shawshank Redemption. I mean, The Shawshank Redemption is one of those movies, it's just almost perfect in every way. It hits every beat just right. I mean, it tells the story of Andy Dufresne, who's wrongly accused, spends his whole life in prison, meets his best friend along the way. I mean, the movie had everything that you needed in a prison movie. It had the butt pounding by the sisters, it had a guy who does taxes for the warden for his inside schemes, and then it had Morgan Freeman with narration. I remember seeing this the very first day it came out on VHS back in like, what, 94 I think, and I remember liking it then, and I was, what, 8 years old? I think I was 8 years old, yeah. So, So, I mean, I've always liked the movie, and it's always been considered one of my favorite movies. And the thing about it is, I know a lot of people probably couldn't rewatch The Shawshank Redemption over and over, but every time that thing's on cable TV, I stop and I watch it. And then you have the ending of Shawshank Redemption where, you know, you have Tim Robbins on the beach, and then you have Morgan Freeman, he's walking across the beach, and he sees his best friend. After all these years, these guys are out of the slums of prison, and they're on this bright and sunny beach. What a beautiful ending, and it brought a tear to my eye. Alright, so we're finally here at my #1 pick of all time for the best movie. And it's going to have to be Forrest Gump. I know. A lot of people are probably disagreeing with me right now about Forrest Gump being the #1 movie of all time. But the thing about Forrest Gump and why I put it in my #1 spot is, A, I can rewatch Forrest Gump any day of the week. I've seen that movie probably a little bit under 100 times, you know, with VHS tapes, DVDs, Blu-rays, and cable TV. It's another one of those movies where every time it's on, you stop and watch it, and you respect it, because Tom Hanks is one of the most likable damn guys on the face of the planet. I mean, it's the story of a young kid who has a disability, who goes on and almost accidentally achieves all these great things in life. And this simple man from Alabama goes on to live one of the biggest life stories of all time. I mean, he meets presidents. He's a Vietnam War hero. He runs across the country. He plays fucking ping pong. He meets Lieutenant Dan. He's a shrimp boat captain. And then coincidentally falls in love with this hippie girl named Jenny, who her father used to beat her, and then she got into drugs and became a hippie, and then she gets AIDS somehow. But then she has sex with Forrest Gump, but he doesn't get AIDS. But then they have a kid who doesn't have AIDS either. Which I know is slightly possible, but damn, what are the odds? Then again, that kid with a crooked spine that looked like a question mark with braces on his legs went to meet great presidents like Richard Nixon. I consider Richard Nixon a good president. Oh well. Forrest Gump, directed by Robert Zemeckis, did a great job. He introduced new technology for the first time. He made presidents come back to life. All the special effects. I mean, just a great film in every aspect. I mean, you had the technical aspects that were perfect. You had the acting aspects, you know, that were just... Every actor in that movie was on cue, right where they should be. Everybody fit the parts perfectly. And then you had young Forrest, who was played by Haley Joel Osment. I kind of hate that little asshole, but yeah, I'll overlook it for Forrest Gump. And the thing about Forrest Gump is, you meet this young kid, and you go with him all the way through his life, and you really feel like by the end of the movie, you were right beside him the whole time. I think that's where the movie accomplishes its goal. I mean, you were there with Forrest the first time he touched a boob. And that's when you know you have a great film on your hands. So anyway, guys, those are my top 20 favorite movies of all time. And, you know, every single one of those movies means something to me. They were memorable to me. And, you know, I didn't have any script here today. Everything I said, it was just from the heart. And that's when you know, these movies mean something to you. And I knew that's when I had my list right, when I could just sit there and talk about them and quote them without even thinking twice about it. But anyway, guys, I'm John with the TheFLICKpick channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.